Today we're going to talk about diabetes. There are two types of diabetes. One is known as, most common is type 2 diabetics or adult onset diabetic. This involves a problem with the metabolism in the body, created usually by a excess of refined carbohydrates, sugar, particularly the onset of corn syrup, corn sweetener has accelerated this, and a lack of appropriate fats in the diet. The other type of diabetes is known as type 1 or juvenile diabetes, and that is actually a failure of the pancreas to produce insulin at all. Again, this has been associated with an autoimmune response in the body and or a reaction from a viral infection. Again, rarer. That type of diabetes would necessitate the use of insulin. Type 2 diabetics eventually, or some type 2s use insulin, but again, that's usually because they're not controlling the problem. It's escalating and degenerating. We now see type 2 diabetes. It used to be an old person's disease, then it's crept into middle age, and now we see it in teenagers. So now we see an old person's disease in teenagers. I think this is directly related to the food that we're eating these days. You know, when I'm 57 years old, so when I was a schoolboy, I can remember the school lunches, and the school lunches were a small portion of protein, animal protein of some kind. There were 2 servings of vegetables, maybe a starch, and potentially some fruit. So it was a very balanced, and the predominant of that was natural carbohydrates, fruits and vegetables. Today, we're eating, the proportions have doubled, and the type of food that we're eating are in there because there's hardly any fruits or vegetables. The protein portion is larger, and then we have a lot of refined carbohydrate or trans fats. This is particularly a problem with children who are in low socioeconomic area, because the government has mandated that they're going to be fed in many districts 2 meals a day, breakfast and lunch, and they've also mandated that they have to have the caloric intake for a full day in those 2 meals. Well, that would be okay, but what you find is that there's a huge amount of obesity in this population because they're not only eating that, but they're also eating things that they're buying. It's so funny. They actually have, the corn industry actually has commercials about that corn syrup, corn sweetener is sugar. Sugar is sugar. Well, it's not the same. Sucrose is not the same as fructose, and corn syrup is not the same. Sucrose is, your white sugar, and again, that's in excess. That's a problem as our sugar intake increases, because it's devoid of vitamins and minerals is the problem. So it utilizes vitamin and minerals to burn that energy. But corn sweetener takes 8 times longer for our body to handle that and get that out, and it actually has to go through an extra step through the liver. So when we ingest an equal amount of our sucrose, the corn sweetener, it's 8 times longer for your body to handle that sugar load. So this is, in my opinion, is one of the increased reasons that we're seeing the increased obesity and the increased amount of diabetes in a younger population. There's usually about 1 teaspoon of sugar per ounce. So you're 12 ounces. You got 12 teaspoons of sugar. If any of you have children like I have, and you see a 3 or 4-year-old and you give them a birthday cake and you give them soda, it's like craziness. They are on a high. They're running around like crazy. What are we thinking giving a 3-year-old 12 teaspoons of sugar? We're just setting this person up. That's causing all kinds of reactions. Their body's going into frenzy. They're having to produce insulin like crazy to control their blood sugars, to keep them from spiking. And a repetitive use of this year after year is going to wear out this mechanism. So finally, the body quits listening to insulin. They have insulin resistance, and you're not lowering the sugar. So, when your sugars stay now at a fasting level over 100, you're a diabetic. I have patients come all the time. They say I'm pre-diabetic, or I'm kind of diabetic, I'm borderline diabetic. Well, it's kind of like being borderline pregnant. Either you are or not. You are a diabetic. Many people are pre-diabetic for months and years. This can change if you change your diet, and particularly if you exercise. You can arrest and reverse this. Type 2 diabetes is a totally curable ailment. I'm always amazed at how many patients that I see who have been long-term diabetics, and there's no health professional has ever told them, did you know you didn't have to be a diabetic? They never took the time to educate them. Standard education on diabetes, looking at different food things, will not alleviate or correct the problem. You have to go way on beyond that. There are specific supplementations that you can use, certain micronutrients, chromate, chromium, in the form of niacin-bound, B vitamin-bound chromium, cinnamon, different nutrients like that, alpha lipoic acid are necessary. But you can actually arrest and reverse this. Numerous times we have their diabetic patients, we put them on what is called the ideal protein, which is a decreased caloric intake, and we're actually temporarily taking them away from fruits, vegetables, and grains, and they're eating primarily vegetables and very lean meats. And I've had patients get off insulin in literally days doing this, just because they're not getting the offending foods. Their pancreas is getting a rest. They're on a low glycemic index. So it can happen, and it can happen over time. It takes time. If you become diabetic, it's going to take some months to repair that damage, but it can also be done. Now, there is the kind of the exception to the rule. So generally, obesity and diabetes, type 2 diabetes, goes hand in hand. There is the exception to the rule. There is a type 2 diabetic that's very skinny, and that's usually a metabolic problem within the liver. And so that is handled a little bit differently, but again, can be correct. Many patients, they say, well, it's okay, I can take a pill, I can do this. The problem is that when your blood sugars go to a certain level, it's causing oxidative stress. Oxidative, you've heard antioxidants. Well, antioxidants are nutrients that reduce what's called oxidation. Oxidation is a process that is destructive in our body and creates aging and tissue damage. And specifically, the damage that's done in the diabetic usually occurs in their peripheral nerves in their feet first, causing diabetic peripheral neuropathy, kidneys, causing patients to have kidney failure, going to dialysis, or retinopathy in the eyes, which would cause blindness. Again, these are all very serious, life-changing, potentially life-ending problems that can be arrested and reversed. So again, if you've been diagnosed with type 2 diabetes and you want some help with that area, we can give you counsel, give you guidance, give you some supervision, and you can turn that around.